Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here bringing you all another Market Watch episode. Now obviously today the focus of today's Market Watch is the absolutely crazy ban list that we just had revealed to us. There were so many big changes and so many different implications on the meta. I feel like for every single card that we saw change on the list, there were at least 5 to 10 other cards that saw price fluctuations as a direct result. I have a ton of cards to go over with you guys, but for the sake of not dragging this video on for too long, we're going to cover half of them today and then half of them in another Market Watch tomorrow, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But yeah, let's just jump right into today's Market Watch. So the first big one here, and I feel like this is the card that has resulted in the most other changes on the market as well, we have the Phantom Knights of Rustydish. I believe we actually just talked about this card in the last Market Watch we did, but I didn't actually think that they would be willing to unban it so soon after it got hit. This card is a really important Link 3 monster that helps to effectively provide you with 2 disruptions, as you can dump Silent Boots to set a Fogblade from your deck, then banish the boots for another copy of Fogblade. It is a really big boost to decks like Phantom Knights, Orcus, and Burning Abyss, all of which can make this card extremely easily by going into either Galatea or Cherubini. Now this card does have just the one printing available. It was an ultra rare from the legendary hero decks, the one that came with the Heroes, Phantom Knights, and Nordic cards. As such, it is a bit annoying to have to buy a deck just for a single card, right? So you're probably better off just buying the singles. Fortunately, it is something that you just need to run the one copy of, so it's sitting at a fairly reasonable $6 a piece. I could definitely see this card hitting maybe $10 or $12 if Orcus or something like that becomes an actually meta relevant deck, but it's very unlikely to get too much higher than that. We should also note that the supposedly leaked maximum gold list that we saw a few months ago, Bardiche was actually on that list, so a lot of people are speculating that that list might be real now, but who knows. This definitely isn't a card that you should be buying a ton of copies of because it doesn't have a very high price ceiling, but at only $6, Rustydish is still quite affordable, so you should be able to pick it up for your own use without any issues. Next up we have Phantom Knights Fogblade. So Fogblade is the card that saw the most significant price spike of all the Phantom Knight cards directly as a result of the unbanning of Bardiche, and this does make a lot of sense. Fogblade is the card that you usually search off of Bardiche, and it's effectively like a Fiendish Chain. However, you can also banish it from your graveyard to summon out a Phantom Knight from there, so it's a great card that provides a lot of utility for the deck. Now despite having multiple printings, this card is still quite expensive. The original Ultra Rares are up at $20 a piece, and the Battles of Legend Secret Rares are at $17. Now, even the commons from the same legendary hero decks as Bardiche are up at $9 to $10 a piece, which is quite a bit for a common. If you want to play Bardiche, while Bardiche itself and the other Phantom Knight monsters are actually fairly affordable, Fogblade is the expensive piece that's going to make it a bit more annoying to put the deck together. The card is a bit harder to find than other cards, right? Since the Ultras and Secrets were relatively hard to pull, and the common was locked behind the 3 decks with a higher MSRP, and it's more expensive than Bardiche because it's something that you're going to play at 3 instead of at 1. Honestly, I don't know just how good Phantom Knights or Orcus or anything like that is going to be moving forward, or if Fogblade is even on Konami's reprint radar. It kind of depends on how long Konami has been thinking about unbanning Bardiche for. If it's something that they decided to do fairly recently, then maybe we don't see it reprinted until early in 2021, right? But if they thought about it ahead of time with the thoughts of selling Phantom Rage, then maybe they do reprint it in the maximum gold set as well, or an upcoming OTS pack. Unfortunately, I don't have a definitive answer for you guys. This is one that you guys are kind of going to have to speculate about and make a decision for on your own. Personally, I have some secret rare copies that I've been holding on to for quite some time, so that's my set that I'm going to keep for if I do decide to play the deck, but I'm looking to move all of my extra copies and my lower rarity versions of the card, just in case the whole Phantom Knight engine doesn't really pan out. Okay, so on to probably the most significant single card on this list, we have Harpy's Feather Duster. Finally, after being unbanned for so long in the OCG, we got it unbanned here in the TCG as well. It was really only a matter of time. I'm just kind of surprised that it happened now, because you would think that they would wait until after Lightning Storm was reprinted and they used Lightning Storm to help push some sort of product, but oh well. Now there are actually several different printings of Feather Duster, but they're mostly fairly old and harder to find. So we're going to skip over the Tournament Pack Super Rare, the World Championship 2004 version, and the False-Bound Kingdom versions of the card, because those cards are kind of on their own level and they're ridiculously hard to find. You probably won't be seeing too many of those around anyways. More realistically for us average players, we have the original video game secret rare promo from Stairway to the Destined Duel at $35 each, the legendary collection Yugi and Joey's World ones for around the $40 mark, and then the battle pack starfoil and rare versions going for about $20 a piece. Honestly, these prices aren't actually that bad. We all kind of knew that Feather Duster would come back at some point, given how long it has been unbanned for in the OCG, so hopefully you have your copies already. I collect ban cards, right? So I was sitting on like a dozen copies. I had enough to give some to some of my group of friends. Now with this card's unbanning, it is also very likely that we see a reprint for it in the near future. It just kind of depends on when that is. It could very well be in maximum gold, which I think is the most likely, but I could also see it taking the place of Dark Ruler No More in the Charmer structure deck, or being an OTS tournament pack ultimate rare, the same way that Raigeki was. Either way, this is a card that you guys should probably make sure that you own because it is probably going to be a competitive staple. Oddly enough, I do think that if you are going to pay $20 for a common, you may as well spend that $35 to $40 for a secret rare copy, because in the event that Feather Duster does get reprinted as a common or some other easily accessible print, the secrets are much more likely to retain value, whereas the commons will probably tank considerably. The next card that we're looking at here is Plague Spreader Zombie, and this is actually a card that people have been talking about for the last half a year or so, with the banning of O-Lion and Jet Synchron, as well as us already seeing hits to cards like Steam the Cloak and Glow Up Bulb, among other tuners. We are now looking at what other tuners could potentially be used in their place to summon off of Needle Fiber. One of the best looking targets is Plague Spider Zombie, a level 2 tuner that you can still use with a Linkross token to make that Martial Metal Marcher. It is also useful in that you can summon it out of the graveyard once by placing a card from your hand to the top of your deck. Kind of annoying, right? But if you were already discarding a card to summon Jet Synchron, it's basically the same thing. Anyways, Plague Spreader is now quite an expensive card. The Ultimate Rare First Edition copies are completely bought out on TCG Player, and I think there's a few that are like $320 or something crazy like that. I don't think anyone's buying it at that price. The other versions are more affordable, with the Ultimate Rare Unlimited ones being $47 and the Ultra Rare First Editions being very close to $50 each. The card does have several lower rarity versions, like a couple of common versions and gold rare printings, the most notable being the Duelist Saga Ultra Rare at $7 each. Realistically, I would be okay with just picking up and using a common for only $1. I think that the card will see use alongside other tuner options like the Deskbot or the Recover, but I don't think that there's any single card that's going to be as dominant the way that O-Lion or Glow Up Bulb were. Definitely a card that you'll want to pick up soon so that you have access to it. I would just only pick it up in a lower rarity, more affordable version. The next card that I want to keep an eye on is Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss. Burning Abyss actually got a ton of buffs on this ban list between the Rustydish, Tour Guide going to 3, and then Graph and Seer both going to 2. Admittedly, the deck isn't anywhere nearly as good as it used to be, right? Dante isn't as problematic or as hard to get rid of, and dealing with Graph and Seer is much easier now than it was before. However, I think that there's definitely still going to be a ton of people that are looking to play Burning Abyss. The archetype is one of the most beloved archetypes of all time, so there will be people who want to try and bring it back. So for now, the Duelist Alliance secret rare versions of Dante are around that $20 to $25 range, depending on if you're looking at First Ed or Unlimited, which isn't actually that bad. I know we saw them hit $40 not that long ago for the secret rare First Edition copies, so keep an eye on this card. But the reprint secret rares are $10 each, the gold rares are about $4 or so, and I think there's also commons that are less than $1 a piece right now. Nothing crazy to worry about yet, right? But I would keep an eye on the price of Dante. It is a card that has a history of being really volatile in terms of price, so it could very easily spike in the future. Probably a card that if you can pick it up for cheap or you can get some of the lower rarity versions in trades, they might just be worth holding onto in case we get additional Burning Abyss support or the deck starts to pop up in tournament results. So I think that the strangest change on this ban list was definitely Called by the Grave going to 1, which kind of came out of nowhere but also felt really unnecessary. The card wasn't really seeing all that much play, but it was an important way for combo decks to get through something like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. You would also think that with Harpy's Feather Duster getting unbanned, you could also clear a set Called by the Grave, so it would be even less problematic now, but oh well. As a result of this though, we've seen a huge price jump in the price of Triple Tactics Talent, which was already trending up from $60 to $70 but is now up at almost $100 a piece. This is because this card functions as an additional way to play through hand traps. If your opponent hand traps you, it allows you to draw additional resources or get rid of another card from your opponent's hand, so it makes it feel a little bit less horrible when you get hit by a hand trap or something like that. I do think that Triple Tactics Talent is still a good card. It'll probably see meta play moving forward. I just don't know if it's going to be a meta staple or not. Talents doesn't actually allow your card effect to go through if it's interrupted, right? So hitting a key card in your combo could end your turn regardless of what you draw into or what you rip from your opponent's hand. I think that Called by the Grave getting hit on this ban list is probably a sign that we're going to see Crossout Designator brought over to the TCG in something like Maximum Gold, because it's the closest thing to a direct replacement for Called by the Grave. But yeah, Talent does actually now have the potential to develop into a staple in the current format. It kind of depends on what we see from the meta moving forward, with what decks and strategies are actually going to be used, and also just how prevalent things like hand traps will actually be moving forward. Next up, let's take a quick look at Kuraz the Light Monarch. So Pantheism finally went to 3, which I think people have been hoping for an extremely long time, because it is a draw 2 for the Monarch deck, but it also gets you a key card out of your deck by banishing it out of the graveyard, which is nice. I guess that because of this, people are wanting to pick Monarchs back up again, and with that they really want to bling out their decks with Alti Kuraz. The deck still has some neat tricks, right? Cards like Monarch's Erupt being a skill drain, and then they also have the domain lock that they can go into quite easily. I just think that with Feather Duster and Lightning Storm around in the game, the chances of them being able to actually set up the lock and being able to sit on it is kind of limited. Also, the deck is really restricted by its dependency on its normal summon, so it's still extremely prone to bricking with high level monsters as well, where you aren't able to play the game. It's the year 2020, guys, and I don't think that we are going to see Monarchs be able to keep up with the pace of other decks in the game right now. Now, the ultimate rares, we are currently seeing Alti Kuraz sitting at $50 each on TCG Player, which is quite high. I'm more used to seeing this card at around the $20 to $25 mark, but we also have the Duelist League rares and the super rare versions, which are each around $5 a piece, which isn't completely unreasonable actually. The rest of the Monarch deck is very, very cheap, right? Because you just need to pick up the Monarch structure decks in order to play it. So if you need to pick up this card in order to complete your core, sure, I would just recommend picking up the supers or the Duelist League rares as the cheaper versions if you do need them, not the ultimate rares. I would expect the ultis to fall back down to around the $30 to $35 mark when people try out the deck in tournaments and it really just fails to perform. Makiura the Destructor is a card that just came off the ban list, and it went from being banned all the way down to unlimited status. The card actually received an errata, so instead of being able to activate as many traps from hand as you want that turn, you only get to activate one, which is much more reasonable, right? It prevents the card from being used with FTKs by abusing Reckless Greed in Legacy of Yatagarasu, but unfortunately I feel like this card won't be seeing any play at all moving forward. I think that it might see the occasional usage in some kind of degenerate FTK using something like Chain Material, but that's about it. Anyways, the card is expected to receive a reprint in the Rage of Ra set, which should be interesting. Now, the super rare version of this card from Dark Beginnings 1 is the only holo version of the card, currently sitting at $18 a piece, which is relatively high, but this card is also an old collectible card as well, so that's pretty cool. There's a couple of common prints available as well, which are around $4 each at the moment. Overall, I think that this is a card that you should sell off for now. It isn't going to have any implications towards the meta, and it does have a reprint coming soon, so for now its price bump is just because of the hype for it coming fresh off of the ban list. Sell the card for whatever value you can get, and then if you really need it, buy a reprinted errated version whenever Rage of Ra drops. Another card here just to touch on briefly, we have ABC Dragonbuster. This card just went from 1 to 2 on this ban list after it was hit to 1 back in April with the changes to the Master Rule. I think that this card never really should have been hit in the first place. If it stayed at 3, it still probably wouldn't have been too overpowered at all. It is pretty reasonable for us to assume then that this card will likely go to 3 on the next ban list that we see, assuming that we don't see anything ridiculously broken out of the ABC deck in the meantime. So while this card was reprinted in OTS Tournament Pack 13, the only expensive version of the card is the secret rare from Legendary Collection Kaiba, which as the highest rarity version of the card is up at $5 a piece at the moment. The other versions of this card are quite cheap, and all the other cards like the pieces and the Union Hangers are all under $1 or so at the moment. This deck core might just be something to slowly pick up the cards for, because with tools like Union Carrier and Galaxy Soldier, the deck might start to pop up here and there as a rogue meta strategy. It's a core that you should be able to pick up for under $20 or so keep an eye out for the cheap cores, or if you can pick up the pieces individually and slowly assemble a core, it's something that I would look at doing sooner rather than later. Totally Awesome is a card that was in the exact same situation as ABC Dragonbuster, a card that Konami was scared of seeing at 3 under the new Master Rule, so they hit it down to 1 unnecessarily, and are just now realizing that maybe it didn't need to be hit in the first place. Toad is still a really strong card if you're able to get it out, essentially just being a free negate that also fetches you a resource from your graveyard. This card is harder to find than ABC Dragonbuster though, so it is considerably more expensive. It only has the 2 secret rare printings, the original and then the Megaton reprint. Because of this, the card is harder to find, and we're looking at $20 for the reprinted secret rare and $30 for the original secret rares. The big thing is that I don't think that too many decks are really going to be able to abuse multiple copies of Totally Awesome at the moment. The closest thing is something like Paleo Frog, right? But with Feather Duster running around in the current format now, that's probably not something that you would want to take to a high level event. The closest thing I can think of is something like Mermails, where they're bringing out Toads using Bahamut Sharks or something like that. It's worth noting that Toad was another card that was supposedly leaked on that maximum gold list, so it might be reprinted there, or it would be a pretty cool OTS tournament pack ultimate rare to see as well, so that is something to keep an eye on. But unfortunately for now, if you want to play it right away, you'll have to suck it up and pay up for one of the only 2 printings that are currently available. The last big card that we're going to talk about today is Galatea, the Orcust Automaton. Orcusts are definitely a really scary deck at the moment with the unbanning of Bardiche. They have access to a lot of tools together now that could make them very meta relevant. They have access to both Gearsu and Bardiche at the same time, and with Red Eyes Dragoon being a really solid option in the deck, we could definitely see it make some noise on the competitive scene. The deck is still a top tier strategy in the OCG, and that could definitely carry over to here. The big things that the deck is missing is Harp Horror, but that's just the 1 copy of that card that the OCG currently has available, and then Max C, which is obviously a really big game changer overall and kind of warps the format over there. Remember, the deck can also do some interesting things using the rank up magic to turn Dingirsu into true king of all calamities as well. Orcusts are definitely a deck that I'm keeping an eye on, and I think a lot of other people are having similar thoughts, as we're seeing Galatea up at $65 a piece for the ultimate rare version of the card, up from the $40 or so that it was at before. Galatea is a card that was seeing play at 2 or 3 in Orcust before, so being a key card in a potentially meta strategy, it was bound to spike. I don't know how good Orcusts are actually going to be. For me, they're a little bit too bricky for me to feel comfortable playing with it at a high level event, but there's definitely a lot of potential there for sure. If we see the deck do well, then yeah, I could see it jumping up to $75 to $80, but if it flops, maybe it falls back down to around the $40 to $50 mark. Personally, I am staying away from this card because I think that there's consistency issues that are a bit too concerning for me, and I think they will hold the deck back from being able to establish a place in the meta. But just in case, you can still grab your super rare copies for under $1 or so in case you want to have access to the card nevertheless. Alright guys, that is it for today's Market Watch episode. Today was just kind of like the bigger cards, the one that saw huge price jumps that are kind of in your face. Tomorrow we're going to be doing another Market Watch where we review some of these smaller but still extremely important price movements that we've seen on the market. I have another 20 or so cards that I want to go over with you guys, so make sure that you guys are staying tuned for that. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button for me. If there's anything else that I missed, or maybe anything that you guys think I should cover on tomorrow's episode as well, please make sure you let me know in the comments section down below. And of course, for more Market Watches just like this and all of the other great content that Tombox and I bring here on the channel, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button for us as well. And yeah, until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.